In this session, I'm going to discuss about regulation of kidney function and then micturition process. So first, let's see regulation of kidney function. So here, the kidney function is monitored and regulated by a hormonal feedback mechanism. So this hormonal feedback mechanism will involve the hypothalamus. It involves again JGA. So this stands for the juxtaglomerular apparatus. Later we will study in detail what actually is this juxtaglomerular apparatus, and also the heart is to certain extent involved in this hormonal feedback mechanism, right? So now we will see here how this hormonal feedback mechanism takes place involving the hypothalamus, the juxtaglomerular apparatus, and the heart. So I say here the kidney function will be under the control of two mechanisms. Function is under the control of, okay, one, that is a ADH hormone, that stands for anti-diuretic hormone. Diuresis is a condition where the person right have a problem of frequent urination, so there is more formation of diluted urine. We call the condition diuresis, and this hormone will prevent that, okay, process. Because of that, we call this as anti-diuretic hormone, also called the vasopressin. This hormone is actually produced, okay, in the hypothalamus and is stored in the neurohypophysis of pituitary gland, and it is released from that, okay, posterior pituitary gland. The second one, which controls the kidney function, is RAS. So this stands for, okay, renin angiotensin aldosterone system. We'll see in detail about these two. So how the ADH will help in controlling the urine formation, and also the RAS system, that is renin angiotensin aldosterone system. So first we'll look at ADH. Or vasopressin. Okay, so here in the body we have receptors called Osmo receptors. So Osmo receptors are the receptors that will detect the changes in blood volume. So they detect changes in blood volume. Okay, and these receptors are associated with the hypothalamus, and they are also present in the kidneys. So whenever there is a change in the blood volume, the osmoreceptors will get activated. Okay, so they get activated when there is a change in the blood volume. Not only the blood volume, the osmoreceptors will also detect the changes in the ionic concentration. So they also detect changes in ionic concentration. So when there is any change in the ionic concentration or change in the blood volume, that will activate these osmoreceptors. So once these osmoreceptors they get activated, okay, so it actually stimulates. So the osmoreceptors will stimulate hypothalamus, okay. And I told you that in the hypothalamus this hormone, that is antidiuretic hormone, is produced, and that will be released into the posterior pituitary gland, that is neurohypophysis. So from the hypothalamus, okay, so ADH is produced and, okay, released into the neurohypophysis. The neurohypophysis is the posterior pituitary, and from this neurohypophysis the ADH is finally released to okay, into the blood circulation. So when osmoreceptors they become activate, okay, so that's what I'll mention here, activated receptors, they stimulate the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus, okay, produces this ADH and then stores in the neurohypophysis, okay, and from the neurohypophysis the ADH is released to out, okay, into the blood circulation. So ADH is released into blood circulation, so it is released into blood circulation, okay. So right, this ADH actually has receptors on the cells of collecting duct. So ADH has receptors on cells of collecting duct. So when these okay, so I mean the collecting ducts, there will be so many collecting ducts. So here when the ADH binds to the receptor cells, I mean receptors on the cells of these collecting ducts, then it will actually help in reabsorption of water into the blood circulation, okay. So this ADH receptors on the cells of the collecting duct, so when they bind, okay, this actually helps in reabsorption of water back into the body. So that will, okay, help in reabsorption of water back into the body. So right, so ADH has receptors on cells of the collecting ducts, and when the ADH binds to that receptors, it will, I mean, the collecting ducts will play a role in reabsorption of water back into the body. So this is how the ADH hormone plays an important role, okay, in reabsorption of water. Now, if body fluid volume increases, so if there is a more body fluid volume, okay, so body fluid volume, or I say increase in body fluid volume. So when there is an increase in the body fluid volume, so this again gives information to the osmoreceptors. So the osmoreceptors now they will get deactivated. So they get deactivated, and when they get deactivated, then okay, the hypothalamus will stop producing the ADH hormone, right? So this, so increase in the body fluid volume, okay, will tell the osmoreceptors, and the osmoreceptors will get deactivated, and if the osmoreceptors get deactivated, then it will not stimulate the hypothalamus, and if hypothalamus is not stimulated, then it will not produce ADH hormone. and thereby it stops the reabsorption of water back into the body, because already there is more fluids in the body and there is no need to reabsorb, and this will happen only when there is a decrease in the body fluid volume. So this I'll just see it in a small flow chart. So this is actually a feedback mechanism. Okay, so Osmo receptors. So these Osmo receptors will get activated when there is a decrease in the, I'll just mention, decrease in body fluid volume. So this will stimulate the Osmo receptors. So the Osmo receptors will get activated, and then it stimulates the hypothalamus, and then so it produces ADH hormone, and is released into the neurohypophysis. So this is the posterior pituitary, and from there the ADH is released into blood circulation. And I told you that this ADH has the receptors present on the cells of a collecting duct. So receptors of ADH are located on cells of collecting ducts. Located on the cells of collecting ducts, and so this will actually help in reabsorption of water from the collecting duct. Okay, so now what happens if there is a increase in the body fluid volume? So we'll see here. So increase in body fluid volume. So an increase in the body fluid volume will again tell the osmo receptors. So in this case, the osmo receptors will get deactivated. And if they get deactivated, it is not going to stimulate the hypothalamus. So no stimulation of hypothalamus. So if there is no stimulation, then this whole process will not take place. Right. Or I'll mention separately. So deactivated, no stimulation, and so if there is no stimulation to hypothalamus, no ADH produced. So no ADH hormone is produced. So right, this is a negative feedback mechanism that actually tells the hypothalamus when to release the ADH hormone and when to stop the ADH hormone. So decrease in the body fluid volume will stimulate the hypothalamus and ADH hormone will be released. And if there is an increase in the body fluid volume, then the osmoreceptors will get deactivated and there will be no stimulation, and there will be no production of ADH hormone. Next, ADH also acts on blood vessels. So when this ADH acts on blood vessels, okay, the blood vessels will show the constriction, means the diameter of the blood vessels decreases and it results in the increase in the blood pressure. So when the ADH acts on the blood vessels, okay, constriction of blood vessels occur. So if the constriction of the blood vessels take place, then it results in increase in the blood pressure. So increase in the blood pressure. This in turn increases the GFR, so that is glomerular filtration rate. So when there is more blood pressure, the more flow of blood to the glomerulus takes place, and that results in increase in the GFR. So ADH acts on the blood vessels, and that results in constriction of the blood vessels, which mean the diameter of the blood vessels decrease, and decreasing in the diameter of the blood vessels will increase the blood pressure, and that increases the GFR. So this is how the ADH hormone plays an role, okay, in maintaining the body fluid volumes. Then let us see the next one, the RAS system. So where I told it stands for renin angiotensin aldosterone system. So before we understand this, okay, the process, the renin angiotensin aldosterone system, we need to see the structures here. Okay, here we have the Bowman's capsule. Okay, and entering into the Bowman's capsule, we have is the afferent arteriole, and this is an efferent arteriole. So we can see here there is a difference in the, okay, so that's a glomerulus. This is the Bowman's capsule, and this is afferent arteriole, and this is efferent arteriole, and this is the glomerulus. Now here, okay, the distal convoluted tubule will come in close contact with this, okay, afferent arteriole. So you will see this will be the distal convoluted tubule. So this is DCT, the distal convoluted tubule, which is in close contact with the afferent arteriole. So this afferent arteriole, inside it has, okay, some special cells lining it, and these are called the JG cells. So they are called juxtaglomerular cells. So here the juxta, which means adjacent. So adjacent to the, okay, glomerulus, you find some cells, okay, and those are called juxtaglomerular cells. So in short, you can write, okay, JG cells, juxtaglomerular cells. Now in the distal convoluted tubule, you find again some special cells, what we call them as the macula densa. So special cells called macula densa. Okay, and this Jg cells plus the macula densa together will form the juxtaglomerular apparatus. So that is Jg cells plus the macula densa. So together they constitute, okay, JGA, that stands for juxtaglomerular apparatus. Okay, so Jg cells plus macula densa together forms this, okay, JGA. Right, so we understood that macula densa is seen, okay, inside the distal convoluted tubule, and the Jg cells, that is juxtaglomerular cells, are seen inside the afferent arteriole. Now these Jg cells, the juxtaglomerular cells, will produce an enzyme, and that is renin. So they are going to produce an enzyme called renin. This renin is also called angiotensinogenase. You can also call it angiotensinogenase. I'll write it down. So it has another name, angiotensinogenase. The Jg cells are producing, they are producing an enzyme called renin, okay, and it's also called angiotensinogenase. Okay, and coming to these macular densa cells, the macular densa cells are sensitive to concentration of sodium chloride. So these macular densa cells are sensitive to concentration of sodium chloride in DCT. So that is in distal convoluted tubule. Right. So here, coming to this macula densa, as I told, it is sensitive to concentration of sodium chloride in the DCT. So if there is increase in the sodium, then, okay, it triggers the macula densa cells, which actually contract, which will make this afferent arteriole to contract. Okay, so just increase in the sodium concentration in fluid, okay, in the DCT will trigger macula densa cells. So it triggers the macular densa cell or activates the macular densa cells, and these macular densa cells will in turn act on the afferent arteriole. So these macular densa cells will make the contraction of afferent arteriole. So what happens in this case, the diameter of the afferent arteriole decreases. If the afferent arteriole diameter decreases, then the flow of blood to the glomerulus decreases. Okay, so we know the flow of blood is in this way. Okay, so the, as I said, macular densa cells are sensitive to the concentration of sodium chloride, and if there is an increase in the sodium concentration in the fluid in the DCT, that will, okay, stimulate the macular densa cells, which in turn make the contraction of the afferent arteriole. So there will be a contraction of this afferent arteriole. If the afferent arteriole contracts, the blood flow to the glomerulus decreases. Okay, that I'll mention here. So this reduces blood flow to the glomerulus, right? If the blood flow to the glomerulus decreases, then okay, definitely the GFR decreases. So this in turn reduces the GFR. So if this GFR decreases, or a fall in the GFR, so okay, so GFR, so a reduces GFR, and a reduction in the GFR will stimulate, so this will stimulate JG cells, okay, which are present in the afferent arteriole, and these JG cells are going to produce, okay, an enzyme that's called renin. Oh, right. So I hope this is clear. So the macular denser cells are sensitive to this, okay, sodium, and when there is an increase in the concentration of sodium in the fluids in the DCT, it will trigger the macular denser cells, which in turn, okay, make the afferent arteriole to undergo contraction, thereby decreasing the diameter of the afferent arteriole. If the afferent arteriole diameter decreases, then the flow of blood to the glomerulus decreases, and that decreases the glomerular filtration rate. And a decrease in the glomerular filtration rate will stimulate the JG cells present in the afferent arteriole, that produces an enzyme that's called renin or angiotensinogenase. This renin is going to act on a substance called angiotensinogen. So this angiotensinogen is produced in the liver. Okay, so there is a substance called angiotensinogen. So this angiotensinogen is produced in the liver and released into the blood circulation. So it is present in the blood circulation. Now this angiotensinogen is a inactive inactive form. So this is an inactive one. Now that renin, which is released by the JG cells, okay, renin, this is released by the JG cells, will act on this angiotensinogen, and they are going to convert this into angiotensin 1. So it's going to convert into angiotensin 1, and this angiotensin 1, right, is converted again into angiotensin 2, is converted into angiotensin 2 with the help of another enzyme called ACE. So the ACE stands for angiotensin converting enzyme. So it, okay, converts the angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2, and this angiotensin converting enzyme is present in the lungs and also found in the kidney epithelial cells. So this ACE will convert the angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2, and this angiotensin 2 is a powerful vasoconstrictor. So angiotensin 2 is a powerful vasoconstrictor. So vasoconstrictor means which actually reduces the diameter of the blood vessels. So vasodilator, which increases the diameter of the blood vessels, that is vasodilator. and vasoconstrictor, which means the one that reduces the diameter of the blood vessels. And if the diameter of the blood vessels is reduced, okay, we know it results in increase in the blood pressure. So when the blood vessels diameter is decreased, then it results in increase in the blood pressure. So this angiotensin 2 will be a powerful vasoconstrictor, and it acts on the blood vessels. Okay, so angiotensin 2 acts on blood vessels, and okay, the diameter of blood vessels decrease, and decrease in the diameter of the blood vessels, okay, increases the blood pressure. An increase in the blood pressure results in increase in the GFR, so that is glomerular filtration rate. So an okay, increase in the blood pressure increases the GFR, the glomerular filtration rate. Okay, so if the okay, so that is what the glomerular filtration rate will be brought back to the normal. So there we have seen a decrease in the glomerular filtration rate, and the decrease in the glomerular filtration rate activated the JG cells, and they produced this renin, and again okay, it tried to bring back the GFR to the normal condition. So this is okay, a feedback mechanism that helps to maintain a constant GFR in the kidneys. And again, an increase in the blood pressure will result in more amount of blood to the atria. Okay, so increase in blood pressure results in okay, increased flow of blood into atria. So in this case, the heart will release another hormone that we call it a atrial natriuretic factor. So as we know, the atria are part of the heart, and what happens is the heart releases a hormone called, so in response to the increased flow of blood into the atria, okay, so heart releases a peptide hormone, means the hormone which is made up of protein, and that peptide hormone is called ANF, that stands for okay, atrial natriuretic factor is the name. So this ANF is a hormone, and this is a vasodilator. So vasodilator, which actually relaxes the smooth muscles in the blood vessels, thereby increasing the diameter of the blood vessel. So the vasodilator okay, increases the diameter of blood vessels. Okay, right. So here the vasoconstrictor acts on those smooth muscles of the blood vessels, which results in the contraction and reducing the diameter of the blood vessel, whereas the ANF, that is atrial natriuretic factor, will act as the vasodilator, and it increases the diameter of the blood vessel. And increase in the diameter of the blood vessel okay, reduces the blood pressure. Okay, so this is all linked one to one, and will help to constantly maintain the glomerular filtration rate in the kidneys. That's all about the RAS, the renin angiotensin aldosterone system. Okay, of course, We'll see what is the role of this aldosterone. So we have seen what is this renin and angiotensin. We will see the role of aldosterone. Uh, I told that angiotensin 2 is a vasoconstrictor. So this also okay acts on adrenal cortex. So the angiotensin 2 acts on adrenal cortex and activates it. So it activates the adrenal cortex. So the adrenal cortex uh, will be releasing. So in response to this angiotensin 2, it releases the aldosterone. So it releases the aldosterone. So this aldosterone will help in reabsorption of. So it reabsorbs okay sodium and water from the distal parts of the tubule, from the distal parts of the tubule like the collecting duct. So from where this sodium okay and also water will be reabsorbed here, and this reabsorption of sodium and water from the distal parts of the tubule will lead to an increase in the blood pressure and GFR. Okay, so this results in increase in blood pressure and even an increase in the GFR. So we have come to understand that the aldosterone will increase the blood pressure and also the GFR. Okay. So the next one we'll see is about micturition process. Okay. Micturition is nothing but the release of urine from the urinary bladder. So it simply is a release of urine from urinary bladder. And what is involved here is a micturition reflex. So micturition reflex is involved. Okay, of course, this will be involuntary in case of children, but in case of adults, it will be voluntary. See this, okay, the process how it takes place. Now we know that urine gets collected in the urinary bladder and through the two ureters, so it gets collected into the urinary bladder. So here is the urethra and here you find a okay sphincter, so we call it a urethral sphincter. So this is a ureter. So these two are ureters. Okay, and when the urine gets collected in the urinary bladder, the urinary bladder increases in its okay size. So you can see there is an increase, so that is distended. So when the urinary bladder okay gets distended, there will be okay the stretch receptors on the wall of the bladder. So this is the wall of the bladder, and on the wall of the bladder you find the stretch receptors. So the urinary bladder wall has okay stretch receptors. So these stretch receptors will detect okay the stretching, so that is increasing okay in the right size of the urinary bladder or volume of the urinary bladder. And this receptors, that is the stretch receptors, will send information to central nervous system. It sends information to the central nervous system. So this will be the sensory input, from the stretch receptors to the central nervous system. From the central nervous system we get uh, the motor impulses. So the motor impulses will uh, act on the smooth muscles of the urinary bladder. So they act on smooth muscles of urinary bladder, and this results in contraction of the urinary bladder. So the contraction of the urinary bladder takes place at the same time. There will be the relaxation of urethral sphincter also takes place. So the stretch receptors on the wall of the urinary bladder send information to the CNS, and through the motor nerves, the information comes to the smooth muscles of the urinary bladder and also to the urethral sphincter. So on smooth muscles it will allow them to contract, whereas the urethral sphincters will get released, and as a result the urine will be passed out. So this is what we call the micturition reflex. And in an adult human, the urine passage for 1 day it will be 1 to 1.5 liter. So in adult human, so urine passage is 1 to 1.5 liter per day. Okay, and we'll see here what will be the composition of urine. Okay, so this urine will be light yellow in color and has a pH of 6.0. So urine is light yellow in color and the pH is 6.0. Here the yellow color is due to presence of a pigment. So due to presence of a pigment called urochrome. Okay, and this urochrome is a pigment that is formed during recycling of hemoglobin molecules. Next, there will be water around 95%, we will see. Then there will be salts of 2%. Then urea will be only around 2.7%, and some drugs and uric acid, so these will be around 0.3%. so that's the chemical composition of urine. Okay, and on an average in a day there will be around 25 to 30 grams of urea excreted. Okay, so average 25 to 30 grams of urea is excreted from the body. Okay, so that will be per day, 25 to 30 grams of urea excreted per day. And urine analysis is an important in diagnosing the health of a health of the kidneys, right? Here if we see there is a presence of glucose, the presence of glucose in urea is a condition called the glycosuria, and also there may be presence of ketone bodies. If ketone bodies are present in the urea, the condition is called ketonuria. And if this glycosuria and ketone bodies are found in the right urine, then it indicates the person is suffering from diabetes mellitus. So in many conditions, the urine analysis will help to diagnose the problems. Okay, so that's all about. In the next session we will see a role of other organs in excretion and also disorders of the excretory system, and after which we will go with the objective questions.